Is now starting. So welcome to the New York LESS group. This is really Dr. Rosie Hauck's show. I'm riding along as the host and co-pilot, but I'll be monitoring the chat and letting people into the session because I have to watch the waiting room. So if you have questions, you're welcome to put them into the chat if you want. You can also raise your hand, or if there's a pause, you can just speak up. So we'll do it as we go along. We'll accommodate and be agile about this. So we have a PowerPoint. I'm going to share the PowerPoint with you as a PDF. Let me make sure I can find it here, and then we'll get started. You're welcome to download the PDF if you want, of course. So, and I have to find it here. Bear with me. And while I do that, Rosie, I'll turn it over to you. You can introduce us and
Sure.
Advance the slide.
Sure.
There you go. There's our introduction.
So, hello, everyone. I'd like to thank you guys for popping in on this Friday to hear about some of the, I guess, maybe shenanigans we've been up to, I guess, Tom, here at Illinois State. We've been actually doing this for, I guess, over 10 years now. So, like a lot of good things, we just did it and then see what happened. And boy, it's definitely grown and taken off. And so we're really happy to be here and talk about what we've been doing here at Illinois State for our students here, undergraduate students. So my name is Rosie Hauck, and this is my 21st year as faculty here at Illinois State University. I teach business information systems, which is housed under the Department of Accounting in the College of Business here. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from. And Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you to do a quick introduction.
Sure. I've been an assistant instructional professor. That's what they call non-tenure track faculty at Illinois State. But since 2023, fall of 2023, I received my MBA in December 2022, and then Rosie was going on sabbatical, and she asked me in spring of 2023 if I would teach her capstone Business Information Systems 362 class in the fall. And I said I'd be willing to do that, but I'm not a faculty member at the College of Business. And she basically said, don't worry about that, we'll take care of that. So she went on sabbatical. I taught the class in fall of 2023 using her curriculum and dare I say, maybe making some adjustments of my own. But I had been riding shotgun with her in the class for 10 years. She went through my certified Scrum Master and certified Scrum Product Owner. I don't know, Rosie, back in 2011, 2012,
Something like that.
Something like that. And
where are my
then
certificates?
she approached me and said, I'd like to incorporate these tenets, these learnings into my capstone Business Information Systems class. And I said, have at it. I said, I'll help you where I can. And she developed a curriculum around that. And then she asked me, would you come and do your CSM workshops and your CSPO workshops for my students on weekends during the semester? So one weekend we devote to Certified Scrum Master, and then typically 2 or 3 or 4 weeks later, we do Certified Scrum Product Owner. So the students go through those 2 workshops, they come out with the certifications, and then they go through CSM first, and as soon as they get through Certified Scrum Master, then they actually start doing work for client during the semester, beginning right after that workshop completes on the weekend. And she'll describe more about how that works and what that involves, but that's been my involvement for the last 10 years. I occasionally, when Rosie's out of town or something, I'll work the class for her. But generally, the students are on their own to develop products for clients. They use Scrum. They learn what it means to be agile at the beginning of the class during the semester. Usually the first 3 weeks is devoted to those things. They have activities and sessions that help them understand what that means. Rosie can talk more about that. One of the prominent things they do is they hear from Rich Sheridan at Menlo Innovations. He actually does a session with them, including a tour, a virtual tour of Menlo in Ann Arbor. And he talks about the principles and tenets that he laid out in his 2 books, Joy Inc. and The Joy of Agility. But I guess it's fair to say, Rosie, it spans a lot of material or a lot of interests in that hour-long session, and we just had that this week. So it's always interesting to hear from Rich. That's basically what I've got. You see our contact information if you want more information about the structure of the class, the curriculum of it, basically the logistics. You're welcome to reach out to us. Our LinkedIn information is also there. Back to you, Rosie.
Thanks, Tom. And so when I so what happened is 2013, I got a chance. I was at a conference where I, went to a presentation of a local firm in town, and I, heard about Scrum, and I thought this was really interesting. So I reached out to the speaker and asked if I could shadow. And so I spent probably about summer plus some shadowing basically a Scrum team. At the time, I was already teaching the BIS capstone class. I also teach kind of a more traditional business analysis course as well. It's a beginning level, right? And so, I was kind of curious, what is this Scrum thing? And so I actually shadowed a team. And after a while, I decided, this is something that I feel that, would really be beneficial for our students to learn some of the different tools and the way of working in this type of environment. And so, I basically cold called. I went to the Scrum Alliance site. I looked for anyone who's close, in town, and lo and behold, Tom's name popped up, and I basically cold called him and said, "Hey, I want to learn some more about this. I teach here, but before that, I need to, kind of do my own study myself before I feel comfortable bringing it into the classroom." And my goal was to provide a experiential learning environment for my students, right? I didn't want something where, it's just, a module or a chapter in a textbook that the students read about and go, "Oh, okay, that makes sense," and then move along. But I really wanted to throw them, into the environment so they can really see what it's like to work in this type of environment. And so that was my goal with this class, is to provide them this environment, the freedom to really explore, what, Agile means. And our starting place is the Scrum framework. We all have to start somewhere. These are undergraduate students, and so most of them don't have a lot of work experience, which, of course, in my mind, in a way that's good because they're clean, they're fresh. But and again, they don't have any work experience, right? Um, so I needed to start them somewhere, right? And for that reason, the Scrum framework was how we started, right? Where they go based on on their projects, that is up to them, right? But I wanted to have a common starting point, right? My role as the instructor of this class is to provide them the environment where they can try things and fail, right? And learn from the failure. So we do a lot of reflection. The challenge with this, and I know I talked to Tom about this over the years, is, this is still, it is still an educational institution, right? And so I do have the constraints that an educational institution has. There are things that I have to provide, as far as, this being a course for the university. And so, how my challenge was how to do that while still allowing students freedom and making sure, I still have to have learning goals. I have to submit them, right? I have to have stuff laid out in the syllabus, and I have to grade their work. But I still want them to have the freedom to explore what they feel like they need to explore, in this environment. And it really kind of depends on who our client partner is, which I'll get to in a second. But as a capstone course, this is one of their last, hurdles before they're, done with their education here at Illinois State University. So I thought it's a great opportunity for them to get some, valuable, working professional experience, as well as learning, a different way of working, opposed from the kind of traditional ways. I get to, incorporate, and I've always done this. I do this in my beginning class as well. Outside organizations with their own, business needs and business problems, business constraints, to work with students so they can take what they learn in readings and textbook and actually quickly apply it, right? And see what they can do and see how it works in their, their clients' particular situations. I think the first time Tom mentioned the certification class, I'll get to that a little bit. Okay, can you go to the next slide?
You bet.
Um,
Hold on
Awesome.
just a
And
moment.
feel free to ask any questions as I'm going through this. I mean, we've done this for so long. Sometimes it's interesting to take a step back, on kind of where we've been, and I'll kind of talk a little bit of what we've, updated on the class. So a little bit of the structure. So I kind of feel the first few weeks of the class, I am doing more teaching, right? This is new. They have had other business classes. They've had traditional project management classes. And so that's what they're coming here. And so I feel like it's my kind of goal in the first few weeks to break down some walls in thinking and how work is done. Um, and so I definitely do more hands-on, more teaching. Um, there's more assigned readings. We watch videos, and usually in the first weeks where I, bring in Rich Sheridan, and that was, because of COVID, right? I had to find, things that I wanted to do that we could do virtually. Right. And that's how I guess the relationship with Rich came about. And now, apparently I'm if they want to connect to him, he says mention Rosie. So I've gotten that far with him, but he does a great job. The students do read his book. I've also brought in Joy of Agility as another reading, so we do some reading as well. I also bring in an alumni panel because I want them to hear from previous students who have gone through this, and now after in our 11th year, 20 21, this is 21 semesters of doing this. Our alums have gone off, and I can start to see their trajectory in their careers. They've been out long enough, and they've, been great being able to come back and share with the students, what the this capstone class experience meant to them and how it helped them. And it's always good for me to hear, what they remember and what really kind of impacted them, because that helps me as I continue to, evolve this class. Um, so that's the very beginning of the semester. The majority of the semester, the rest of the semester, is really working on the project, right? And so the students get a chance. I vet the client partners because they are actually doing development work. So I want to make sure that the project is something that is appropriate, for this approach, right? So we have a problem that is complex. Um, and so it fits kind of the unknowns that the students will hit when they start working with the client partner. And so usually, depending on the size of the class, I will have multiple teams working with the same client partner. This is, a lot of this is in part my own sanity. So because it takes a lot of work to kind of set up, the partnership and stuff like that. I don't, yeah, no, I haven't had to work across two partners in one semester before. And so that's been really fortunate. And the nice thing about that too is there is opportunities for the teams to work together if it's appropriate for the client partners. And that's one of the things that really makes us different from other types of projects where the team is just working the project, but it is more real life, right? If they see an opportunity to create more value by working together with another team, maybe having some standards across, the projects, they figure it out, right? I don't. I am very hands off. Once I figure out who's going to be a good client partner, and a lot of it's they're willing to work with students, right? We don't have a lot of time in this class. A semester flies by very quickly. We meet twice a week as part of the class, officially as part of the class, and so I can't have a client that's gonna, ghost my students for 2 weeks, because that'll really impact what they're able to deliver by the end of the semester. And so I find a client partner who's really willing to work with the students. I make it very clear that my priority is students learning. I can't, I never can guarantee what they're going to deliver, but I do know my students will work very, very hard, um, leave something of value to our client. Um, and so, after I kind of set that up, we do 4 2-week sprints, right? So this is after the certification, after we've gone through lots of different exercises, and we've talked through some of the different events and the tools and all like that. Basically, I let the students learn to do the work, right? And throughout the entire semester, we have lots of reflection assignments. So that's where we're going with it, some of the assignments. So they do reflections, after each sprint, individually. They do a project where they're, putting together their entire experience working on the project and with the client, and sharing um, their understanding of Agile and Scrum. And they do another kind of like a final professional development paper and what's next for them, evaluating kind of their skills that they have being a future information systems professional. And then what is next? What is their next goal for the next 2 years, short term, long term goals, and so forth. Okay. I see we have a question in the chat.
I didn't see any questions yet, but
Okay. And
oh, I
so,
might be missing it. Here we go.
okay.
Do you see any constraints in taking this approach to younger students? I assume that means pre-college. we have seen EduScrum used in middle and high school, but the students do not earn a certification. And we've been testing a pedagogy that allows teachers to introduce agile ways of working to students as young as fifth grade and earning professional certifications while teachers practice agile ways of working and managing.
So interesting you should say this, and I've shared this with Tom, and I share it with my students as well. And so, some of the principles, about, adapting and, being transparent, iterative, I've actually brought in to my household. I have two girls who are, the younger one is 14, so she's a freshman. The other one's in college. But when they were young, I would actually use some of these tools. I remember the young one, she must have been maybe 5 when I did this, because this was early on, 5 or 6, because I remember, um, trying to figure out, can she read if I put stuff, or do I need to do pictures? Where, they had certain tasks that they would have to do, and then making the work visible, right, and transparent, when stuff is done, and kind of working together. So, in my mind, and actually she's currently in college, but at the time, she was, a junior, a junior higher. She actually put a Kanban board in her room. And she did it herself, to kind of manage kind of all the tasks that she did. So I think, even, children can understand these principles, right? And I think there's, ways of they can understand, the value of it. So I think that would be really interesting, way to approach, getting people to, kids to understand this early on, as a way of working, right? Um,
I just wanted to
yeah.
say, when my daughter was in fifth grade, she knew what I was doing, my oldest daughter, and she said to me, "Hey, I think Mrs. Wolf is doing things like you do work." And I said, "Okay, maybe I'll come and visit." So I went to Mrs. Wolf's class, and so the students are sitting in pods of 6 in the class. So they're sitting together around sort of a common table in these groups of 6. So she had 30 in class. She had 5 groups of 6. And then at the beginning, the groups stood up and they talked about what they were going to learn that day. And so she asked me, she goes, "Does this align with what you teach?" And I said, "Yeah, it's not as structured as what I teach, but I think the premise is there." And she goes, "Well, they're mostly in control of their learning. I set the foundation for them, but the learning objectives they achieve by their own means. And I help them." And I said, then you're probably doing things fairly closely to how we would do development work. And that was the only time I was exposed to it outside of what we're doing at Illinois State. I had not seen it used in an academic setting at any level other than that. So most classrooms are set up traditionally in rows of seats individually. Hers was not. It was set up in what she called pods. She called them learning pods of 6 people to a pod. So I thought that was interesting.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I don't think, I have no doubt that, children can learn this. It's the adults that are the problem, not the kids, right? So, yeah, how do we get more people who are aware and can bring it in there? So, Thank you for that. Exactly. Yeah. And that's hard, right? And again, that's why I spend the first few weeks of class, because my students, have learned a certain way of working, right? And again, it is kind of, I don't know, fun to break down those walls, right, and help them, get those aha moments, right? And with this class, I think it's I didn't say it, but I just want to make it clear. There are no PowerPoints. There's no lecture, right? Everything we do is hands-on learning and discussing and kind of swarming a problem and putting our heads together and so that's how they're learning the material is by being engaged with it and asking questions and doing what feels effective for them, right? What is delivering value to them. Um, and so that being said, I want to talk a little bit about a little bit more about the work that we're doing. I mentioned before, I can have between, right now I have two teams of six, so it's a smaller class. I think the largest, I think, was five teams. Um, so we had over 30, 32, 34 students, which is pretty much that maxes out my classroom. And remember, I have to find organizations that can support that number of projects. I used to just teach this class only in spring because this was one year. This class was taught only once a year. But the major started to grow, and so I've been able to teach. You started 2016 was the first time I was able to teach in fall as well, kind of as a spillover class. And so, and some years, both, you know, I have over, between about 20 mid-20 students in both my classes, so that's a good thing for the I think for the department. The word is out, students know they're gonna get a good experience, and it does attract more students to the major. We're actually growing a lot as far as a discipline in the College of Business right now. We're definitely kind of expanding. So I'll have multiple teams within the class. Each team will have its own Scrum Master and product owner. So there's opportunity for students who want to take on a little bit more responsibility for the team to step up, and they work on their team. They work with their teams to figure it out. And I allow the students to decide how they want to figure it out and who they, want for their Scrum Master, product owner. I just ask that before each sprint starts, I know who's the Scrum Master and the product owner. And so there's opportunities to do that. I mentioned before, I find the client partner. Pretty much, almost, yeah. In definitely the recent years, our client partners are nonprofit organizations who have a lot of need, but they don't have, any of the resources or knowledge to move forward and, bring about changes to help them with their needs. And so we've worked with quite a few nonprofits in the area. I mentioned before, the work is, complex, and I do have to vet this. And I've learned this, as far as, working with the clients and looking for projects. Something that is, a complex. So the students, have to really kind of work through, what understanding their understanding of the organization, what their needs are, and what's going to deliver the most value in a very short period of time. At this point in time, we have about half the semester. And so we're talking about, around 8 weeks, right? When the project actually starts, right? After kind of the ramp up. And ultimately the goal for the students is to deliver something that's usable and valuable to our client partners at the end of the 8 weeks. So we do the 4 2-week sprints, and so that's a little bit about how the project work goes. Any questions about that?
So there was a question about, do we use mob programming? So we have a friend of mine who I worked with for many years, a very solid developer. And he comes occasionally to the class to talk about, how are you going to approach the work? We encourage them to work in pairs. But when it comes to programming, so they have a level of programming knowledge as business information systems students. They've taken programming classes, they've taken database creation classes, so they understand fundamentally what it takes to build a product. We don't teach mob programming per se, but they mob things because they get into a problem where they need to put several heads together to try to figure out a solution to the problem. So one of their biggest challenges at the beginning of their work is, what problems are we trying to solve here? And we've run into clients that have had a myriad of problems. So when we create the product backlog, we can't put 60 things in the product backlog because we're not going to get 60 things done during the semester. So we have to work, the product owners have to work with the clients to say, look, given the time constraint, and she uses the term project. She knows I try to stay away from that term, but because I consider it product development, not projects. But this is, if you were going to look at projects by their true definition of a firm start date and a firm end date, that falls into the parameters here, because at the end of the semester, this group of people is disbanding. They're leaving. They're graduating, or they're moving on to their next semester. So it was just in the last couple of semesters that we had the same client where we were building products and we use the next semester to continue building those products. But most of the time, it's a one and done thing with clients. So they're confronted with the issue of, okay, we're going to build these products and we're going to deliver them to the client, but who's going to maintain these products? So we have to tell them, if you code a program and you hand it off to a client who knows nothing about coding, then what happens? Because we know the code will stale. The product, they may want to expand the product. So we use the KISS principle, keep it simple, Sam. I won't use the pejorative term, but with the understanding that the simpler that you make it for them to maintain these things, the better off you are. So if you create a database, we use SQL Server databases here. If you do that, the client has to have some level of understanding, or they have to have access to people who have level of understanding, who can either expand the database tables to meet further needs or whatever. And so that's a challenge, right? It always has been a challenge here. And the more complicated you make your solutions, the worse it is for the client, because they're simply not going to be able to absorb that when you leave. They don't know who to turn to. There's no maintenance organization that they can turn to and things like that.
For sure. I mean, with the technologies, I don't know, right? It's not my job to know, right? Or my role to figure out, what platform the client needs. It's really for the students to figure out, right? In terms of what's gonna best meet the needs of what the client, wants, right? Oftentimes, students are working on platforms they've never used before, but you know what? They figure it out just like we do in the real world, right? So it is, if you think about it again, compared to other coursework that they have, it is very different where, there isn't, I don't know what the right answer is, it's really kind of up to the students to figure out what it is. And I see some of the comments about having purpose for work. I have had students, it comes up every semester, usually around, around sprint 3. And this is probably the time where, I'm wondering, are they sick of me yet? But I always get the comment, "Wow, man, I wish this class was longer." Like, no, you have to leave. You have to graduate. But they're like, this class, the time period goes by so quickly. I wish we had more time. And then it's because the students they want to leave something behind for their client partners, right? When they graduate here, they want something that's going to live beyond their time here at ISU, and I think that's helpful because they are, seniors about to graduate, so it can be really easy for them to not be engaged, and I'm sure they are in some of their other classes, given some of the conversations I've heard. But they see as being something that they are able to leave behind. So it feels less of a class, even though it is definitely a class. Prioritization. Oh, I see David's comment too. Is key, right? Again, I purposefully try not to ask. I don't ask the clients these questions. It's up to the students to figure out. My role is just to vet and have a good client. But I think that's kind of that is that's key, right? I have to figure out the priority, right? What's going to deliver the most value given the effort it's going to take to deliver that value, right? And students have to figure that out. So I got a great question, and I've had to address this actually from some of my colleagues and my supervisors here, because this does come up because it is a class, right? So the question is, what is the impact to a student's grade when the client is not sure what they want? Or what they want keeps shifting, right? And there is no impact, right? I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know, like, oh, you didn't develop this, so this is exactly what the client needs. I don't know what that is, right? My role is to figure out, are the students learning, right? Are they engaged? Are they trying things, right? Are they, trying things and learning from those experiments? That is what I grade my students on, right? We can't help it if the clients change their mind, right? We can learn, oh, I should have maybe communicated this with my client, and now I know to better help my clients, I'm going to do this, right? And so there's like a lot of things, there's certain things we cannot control, and that's the price we pay for working with the outside organization. But that is real life. And so I don't mind. We've had organizations we work with, and during the semester, people shift, people leave the organization, right? And so now, some of the people that they were working with are no longer with the organization, and sometimes it happens very quickly. And we adjust, we find someone else, and then we continue to move forward. Again, those are great stories, right? And those students have the best stories to tell when they go into those interviews, right? Because we really don't know what's going to happen, right? And sometimes the failures, they learn more from that, right? And again, this is ultimately this is a class, right? I want them to get the best experience, learning experience, right? I hope that they create something for the clients, and pretty much almost always they do. But that is not the the goal, of the class. My goal is students, basically learn and experience a new way of thinking and working. Um, the next time they work on a project like this, it could be their livelihood, right? But the class is a safe environment for them to work and learn and fail, and right, and that is my goal. And I do let them know, right? This is your chance to kind of learn these really important lessons that you don't get from a textbook, because the next time you do this, it will matter more, right?
I
Just
have
to be honest, right?
we have
So
about 15 minutes, Rosie, but
okay,
I've got a
that
couple
sounds
of
good.
comments about it. So one is in product owner class, we focus on dividing between what the needs of the client are and what the desires of the client are. So, and that's an important element in their learning, because you're going to have lots of wants. But what the students have to dig out of the client is, what do you need? We need to know what you need most. And we get it that you like to have this and you'd like to have that, and gosh, that'd be cool, and that's a shiny object, and man, but we need to know, when you come in and buy the car, what are the fundamental things you're looking for when you buy the car? we're not here to upsell you on the sunroof and the stereo system and things like that. We're here to figure out what fundamental car is it that you need and build that car for you. And, you know, if we have time to add on the sunroof and things like that, that's fine, but we don't have a lot of time to do that. And then there's a question in here, what are the top metrics you use to measure success of each student contributor? So the interesting thing about this class is we look at this from a group perspective, not an individual perspective. And I'll bring up the working agreements that are created by each team. I'll give you an example of one that they do. So there's expectations set forth of behaviors on the teams through these working agreements. And then if people violate the working agreements, it's up to the students to deal with the violation. Like if you're disengaged or you don't show up or you're MIA or whatever, right? Then you have to deal with that, just like we have to deal with that in the workplace. You know, and we know not everybody's created equal when it comes to coding, when it comes to lots of skills, right? So we tell them you have to help each other here. Some people will not be that adept at doing some things. So people that are more adept at it, you know, grab them, pair it with them, help them learn these things. And that's a departure from typical university philosophy where everything's centered around individual achievement. I got an A, right? I don't give a damn what other people got, but I got an A. In this class, you care about what other people do, and you care that they succeed, because the mantra that we have here is you don't fail or succeed as individuals here. You fail or succeed as a team. So you got to figure out, how are you going to do that? And we know that there's going to be failures as a team. We've seen it for 10 years. We've seen it. We've seen them pull their hair out. We've seen them shake their heads. We've seen them in sprint reviews just almost throw their hands up. And we get it, you know, when we tell them this is the real world. This is what goes on after you leave here, is these very things.
Yep. And kind of debate on that on what I do collect from each student. And Tom, if you can bring up the example of the final project, the individual final project. I have the
Sure.
students create, basically it's a web page that kind of uh, shows, you know, details their involvement in the project, kind of what they went through, the challenges that they faced, the skills that they got. They're also, so that they have to demonstrate kind of the personal learning, right? And so this is one of the big deliverables at the end of the semester. And because it's a website, it's something that they can also use to promote themselves. I've seen students share this on their LinkedIn accounts, right? To kind of show, hey, not only do I have my CSM, which they do have, but here's how I used what I learned in that workshop with a real organization, and my story, right? And what I did as part of the team and what I learned, right? And I do have them in this webpage educate people who read it on, you know, what is Agile, what is Scrum, what are some of the events and the tools and the values, principles, concepts in there, right? And so they actually create this as a way of showcasing, you know, their work, you know, throughout the semester, their transformation, you know, of their own transformation throughout the semester, but then also educate people, you know, in terms of, you know, what is, you know, what does Agile really mean and what is Scrum. And so, yeah,
Here's the team agreement that they used in the fall of
that's right.
2023. We only had one team, so this team did an agreement for the 8 people that were in the class. But you can see they set it out with values on the left and then principles on the right. And I tell them, I want you to incorporate the 5 Scrum values. If you want to add additional values outside of the 5 Scrum values, that's up to you. But focus at least on the 5. So they included joy here as a value. They included trust. They included accountability. So they had 8 values altogether. And then the principles are behaviors that they want. And the reason these are three of them are circled in red, that's something I did because during a retrospective, I said, I think these behaviors have been violated. And I said, I'm not going to say anything more than that, but I think you need to assess whether these three principles that I've circled here have been violated. And indeed they had. They agreed that it, and so they dealt with it in their retrospective. How are we going to, so one individual was responsible for the violation of all three of them. And that individual stood up and said, I'm the person that violated those. And so they talked through, okay, what's going to happen? Because they can't vote people off the island here, right? People are enrolled in this class, they paid for this class. So you have to apply, I'm going to call it peer pressure, but you have to apply the wisdom of the group to figure out how you're going to advance beyond the violation of these behaviors. What remedy has to be instituted so that this discontinues, these violations discontinue. I'll scroll on down so you can see what else he did here, but
Sure.
he talked about, the events, what happens, what they used as far as technologies. And then he went through basically a diary of sprint 1, what they built, sprint 2, same thing, sprint 3, sprint 4, and we actually did 5 sprints in the fall of 2023. And this is done in Flash, right? And
It's Adobe.
Adobe.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, Express. So, yeah. So again, it's just a way that they can kind of highlight their work, but then also they can use it, right? Like I said, to promote, what they've learned and hopefully educate others who, maybe employers, potential employers who come across their projects and educate them on some of these ideas. So I think kind of moving along, we have a few more slides. I talked about the outcomes. There's a lot of reflections, right? And so the majority of, there are some assignments, like the assignment that I think is due tonight, I think at midnight. They just did their CSM last weekend. So one of their assignments is called fake or real Scrum Master. And so they have to look for active job postings, and they have to find one that is they're all looking for Scrum Master roles, and that's the title. But when they dig a little deeper, given the description, it's a Scrum Master that really is not using Scrum. And so they have to talk about that and why, and then they have to find another job posting where it is a Scrum Master, and it really is a Scrum Master. True to the values of Scrum and Agile, and that's always a fun one. I think it's very eye opening for them. Again, because they haven't been in the real world. For them, it builds confidence that they know something that other people who are actually working might not even know, right? And part of my goals in this class is for them to build confidence in their skills, because ultimately when they go out in the world, they're going to have, hopefully the courage to speak up when they know a better way of working, right? And let's be honest, a lot of the roles out there aren't here. They're the environment that they get to work in my class, I tell them, you're not gonna find environments just like this, right? It's they're there, they're just not everywhere, right? And so it is kind of really, up to you to, kind of know what you know, and don't be afraid to say, hey, I have a different idea on how we can work this problem or how we can organize, and that's what we're seeing our students doing. So Tom's showing some pictures from the certification course, which is a great, it's a great bonding for the class. It kind of in general, and the first time we did this, Tom, we did this later because, the students, if you ask them at the beginning class, what are you looking forward to? They're like, oh, getting the certification, of course, right? To get, some letters after their name before they graduate, a professional certification. And so we had it later in the semester. I quickly learned, like, know what, we need to do this early in the semester and get this done so that they can actually use it in the, so when they are actually starting the project, they can actually apply what they learn. So we do the certification early in the semester, and, like, if that's what they're for, I mean, we get that over with in the first month of class. But now they're prepped to go into the project using what they learn. Um, uh, you can imagine, because we work with nonprofits, I have been approached by different marketing, for we have the local paper in the Pentagraph, and we worked with our local zoo. The Furniture for Families is another one. This is, I think, a College of Business one publication, but we get some press. It's great for the nonprofit as well that we're working with. The Performing Arts, we partnered with a local community theater company, in town, working with trying to use data to increase diversity. That was a very interesting project. And so we do, you know, um, we do see an impact on our client partners. And now it's to the point where I have client partners referring this class
Mm,
to other nonprofits, which is kind of cool. So they're coming to me. So the group that we're working with this particular
mm,
semester heard about this class by another nonprofit. We worked with 100 Women for Good, and then the current one that we're working with now is a organization that's helping people at or below the poverty line, right, and help them get some needs. So again, it really, the students, are definitely get out of their comfort zone, but they're able to do something, and their eyes are open to, um, again, the challenges of working with real teams and helping an organization that's a very worthy organization that has these needs, right. There are lots of impacts. Again, we're at the point now where we've been doing this a while. We see the students who graduate and their start of their trajectory of their work and their careers, and oftentimes depending on the firm, they might start off as a scrum master or a BA. I see there's a group of students who've become product owners and now product manager. And so I'm starting to see kind of, again, we've been doing this for 10 years, a kind of a trajectory to their work, which is really cool to see. So that the students really are using what they have learned from this class and using it to find their own paths in organizations that do this, or bringing it into organizations, which is even better, right? To go into an organization that may not understand how to work in this way, but then they start to have the courage to bring it in. I've heard students talk about that as well. Sharing in the chat, if you haven't seen it, it was an article that was written. There's some quotes because I was asked to reach out to some of my alums, kind of about the class the Scrum Alliance did together. um yeah, so this, like, kind of talks about some of the challenges that I think I've talked about kind of before, right. It really is an experience for the students, right? And so it's not a class where there's no memorization. It is understanding and living it, right? So that they can go out and help others learn how to do this, right? My job is, providing them the environment so they can do this, right, and have the freedom to be able to learn this in this way. My job is also to vet the clients, right, to find clients that are willing to work with the students, um, and they have good projects that are suitably complex, not too complex, but definitely not too simplistic. But again, it's a class where my students get a lot of benefit from. They work hard, but they do also love the class as well, right? And I get students reaching out to me, years after they graduate, and reaching back. So it is, from a instructor's point of view, it is very satisfying, to have students who reach back and remember the class fondly, right? And to be able to use it to, hopefully find happiness in whatever they decide to do. And so, yeah, I've been, again, very fortunate to be able to teach this class where we can do, it's a little bit of kind of lots of different things. And it's really, as a capstone class experience, I think really works well where they get that professional development and training, also community engagement, which that's a whole nother, topic that, I could talk about. But then also, pulling it together to have this transformative learning experience, and that's what we're providing in this class. Um, and so, yeah, so it's been great. We have had I have right here. I think we have had 340 CSMs awarded, through this class. With the POs, we have over 400. So that's quite a bit for going out into the workforce that would not have had it, and they're using it at the beginning of their careers, which is kind of exciting as well. Are there any questions?
That was a lot in an hour.
I know it is. It is.
It's hard to compress 10 years of experience
Yes,
into an hour.
right. Yeah,
Um,
yes, for sure.
So we'll end it here. We thank you for your questions. We thank you for attending. If you want any more information about the curriculum, there's a syllabus. We can share that, I think, Rosie, that outlines how we set up the class. I think we have rubrics over different things in the class. So
Yes.
there are
And if you're
measurements.
interested, talk to me. We'll talk. We'll talk.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so,
Rosie will
so
talk with you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So for sure, for sure. Cool. But thank you so much for letting us share our stories. And yeah, I look forward to any questions, or please connect. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll stop the recording, I think. Yeah, there we go.